the Speak Easy podcast, where we go behind the scenes and talk about the reasons, the seasons, the ups, the downs, all of the wonderful things that come with being the successfully paid speaker or author. With that being said, I am your host, Alta Pelzer, the voice coach, professional speaker, certified life coach, Amazon bestselling author and podcaster, guys, and founder of the World Voice League, where we are bringing authors and speakers and entrepreneurs together in order to initiate social change. With that being said, I'm excited. So we have an amazing guest today, and we want to dive into some topics that may rub you a little wrong today, but that's okay. Let us know how you feel about it by giving us a review over on iTunes, where we just made number 12 on the iTunes list, bit.ly/Speak Easy Podcast Show, so you can leave a review. With that being said, hey, Tamara, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I am too. So tell them a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to really dive into today's topic.
Okay, great. So I'm Tamara Celeste, the home buying coach. I am an attorney by trade, and I own a real estate company in South Florida and West Palm Beach. I am a real estate empowerment coach for women. So I'm moving away from the day-to-day real estate because I'm really, really passionate about getting out there and talking about home ownership and helping to educate and empower women in particular about home ownership and the importance of owning a home. My Amazon best-selling book, Buy Homes Not Shoes or Other Stuff, A Woman's Guide to Buying Her First Home, has been an amazing educational tool that I'd love to share with everyone, and I hope people are reading it, but it offers some insight into mindset. Why are you spending money in shoes? Obviously, some people are into buying handbags, or some people are into eating out. So shoes is the euphemism for what you spend money on unnecessarily that you could be saving or investing. So that is what I am about.
And I know you guys saw today's topic, resetting the foundation of Let's Play House. We have to get real about this topic, because in a time where we just came, off of a government shutdown with the threat of going right back into another government shutdown, we have to think, have we really been prepared for doing something outside of just working a job? Have we been prepared for owning land and real estate and going ahead and putting money into the stock market? Like, literally, what have we been trained for? And, it starts with that foundation and those conversations we have as a child. And so Tamara and I was talking a little bit before, and I said, as children, we were never taught, go and buy a house. We were taught, when you get married, y'all go and buy a house together. Mm-hmm. We were taught, you make the house a home, but not necessarily to go and buy a house. So let's talk a little bit about that and what really needs to change with that foundational conversation with the little girls.
Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes my clients, I come across women and they'll say, oh, I'm waiting to buy my house when I have a husband, or, I don't want to do it by myself because I don't want to have to take care if something breaks. And, those are the husband part, like you and I talked about earlier, is I tell people, listen, you buy the house now, and hopefully your husband will buy a house, will have a house when you meet your future husband. And I mentioned this in my book, and you rent your house out to Airbnb or get a tenant, and you move into his house or vice versa. So that, especially if you have the means. So these are women that, have decent credit scores, have decent income, and they're renting because, and it boils down to fear. A lot of it just boils down to fear, right? A lot of things that we do or don't do centers around the unknown and the fear of what if. Like, what if my water heater breaks down? Well, you call a plumber. You get a home warranty protection plan which is an insurance policy against things breaking. So it's just the education portion and getting over that fear of, and going back to what you said in terms of family, So you're right. Sometimes our parents or the parents before us, our grandparents were like, you know what, you need a man. You should have a house with a man. You move into a house with a man. You could stay here till you get married, just certain things. So yeah, we have to get past a lot of that.
And you made a good point too. It's like, okay, you're here, you can stay here until that next point happens. Mm-hmm. Kind of don't push them, enough to want to even have their own place sometimes. Mm-hmm. I think that's that motherly piece of it. We don't want our babies.
We don't want them to leave. I did have one friend in law school where her mother was just the opposite, and I was in shock when she finished college. Her mother was like, okay, we're going to look for a place. They put down a down payment for a condo. And looking back on that, when she told me when we were in law school, I was like, oh, your mother kicked you out the house and made you get your own place? And looking back, I'm like, okay, that was probably the best. And she's super independent. She's a very successful business owner now. And that experience for her was a good thing. It's probably a good thing for all of us. But I was just like, oh my gosh, what would I do if I got kicked out and they gave her money to buy a place. So it wasn't like they kicked her out on the street, but that was like something that I think is invaluable.
And it's interesting because it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur that I started to have different conversations, even with my own children, and saying, okay, I want to be able to buy real estate or land for you as your graduation gift. I want you to have that and be able to build from that. And at one point it was, okay, I want everybody to go out to college and move away. And now it's not so much that I want you to go to college and move away, but I want you to feel that independence.
Right. Absolutely.
It's we all as parents, we go and we try to give them everything we can give them.
Right.
But we still want them to have that independence. I want you to know what it feels like to have to pay your bills and to have to, work. One of the funniest things that I found with my kids is now that I'm an entrepreneur, when I talk about them getting a job, it's like a dirty word.
Really?
Like a dirty word. They're like, I'll go find something to sell.
Got it. Well, that's great though. That's great, because this generation, we grew up thinking, okay, we got to go to school, get a job, retire, and then relax, right? Now it's, that mindset is totally shifted. We all talk about it. There's no loyalty in corporate America, right? You're just a number. So it's great that when I hear young people talking about entrepreneurship and seeing how everything shifted, and there's so many ways to make a living your passion and enjoying what you're doing and serving others, I think it's a phenomenal time for people, so that's great that your kids are already thinking that way.
Yeah, I think that was, and the fact that it only happened because I became that entrepreneur was something interesting. Right. And so let's go back to this conversation about real estate, because that's not a conversation that we have.
Right.
I have to say it. Let's be honest, especially in the African American community. We don't have conversations about money.
Right.
We don't have conversations about investments.
Right.
We don't have conversations about real estate.
Right.
And I feel as though it really has held us back from really building, these legacies and being able to achieve the different levels of success that we're really trying to achieve. So what's your take on that?
Absolutely. I'll give you another perfect example. Someone I know grew up in Harlem. Back when Harlem, the city was literally giving away brownstones for $1, right? 30, 40 years ago, right? And probably about 30 years ago. So, and this person grew up in one of the housing projects in Harlem, but very smart, went to college. And he told me, he was like, if I just had a mentor, if someone had told me, just go buy, he was like, I didn't know. I heard about it. But if I had someone who told me, hey, just go get one, go down to this, or whatever the program was, he's like, I would have easily done it, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't know if it would be good. So again, going back to that, it's like, we don't know what we don't know. And how do we start getting that message out to people, right? And how do you start those conversations? How do you, and it starts with the home, right? So you can sit down and talk about, okay, this is what it takes to buy a house. This is, and even before you get to that though, how many parents actually sit down in the Black community and talk about the budget? Like one of my closest friends, she does that. They sit down with their son and they talk about what things cost, and they talk about what the budget is, and they talk about, okay, well, we're not going to do that this month because it's not in the budget. And they're very well off, so they could afford it, but it's not but she's very frugal, but it's not in her budget. And she's not going to do it if it's not in her budget. So they have those conversations, which I think is so amazing. So just even starting there, and then moving into the conversations of investing and, buying homes and buying stock and things like that. So I think we need to become more open in our own households and in the community about finances and about credit scores and about how important it is. I do remember, I didn't really grow up talking about the money aspect, but I do remember my grandfather was so particular about his credit score. So I just grew up knowing, okay, I got to have a good credit score, because that was the thing. He was just meticulous about that credit score. And that's all I remember. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it did. I know what you can get with it. But I just knew, okay, when I get to college, I got my first credit card. I had to make sure it was paid on time, had to have a good credit score. So that was ingrained in my head. But, we didn't necessarily have the money conversation.
And that's interesting too, because when we think about going to college, what's the main thing that we always complain about when we go to college is that they're always giving you an option to get a credit card.
Absolutely.
Nobody talks about budgeting.
Right.
Nobody talks about anything else down the line. They don't talk about the credit score. They just say, hey, you want some free pizza?
Right, exactly. Right. They want to start the consumerism early on. They want you to start buying, and paying 20% on what you buy for the next 10 years. So they're starting it early. They don't talk about that part.
Of course not. No. And we even saw, what's funny is we even saw the progression in the Monopoly game.
Yes.
Where it went from us using cash to now they have the one with the credit card, the ATM card, and you just swipe. And it's like you see the progression over time. Like, wait, that's not how any of this works. You're supposed to have a banker, and you're supposed to have real money in your hand.
Right. Not put it on. I mean, I laughed. I thought about it the other day because my grandfather was legally blind. And I remember going to the grocery store with him on the weekends, and the grocery store didn't take credit cards at that time. And I was like, a lot of stores didn't even take, so we weren't in all this debt back then because we weren't charging food and, clothes and all these other things. So it's gotten so out of hand.
Definitely. And so in this process of getting to, now having this conversation about real estate, you said that it needs to start early on.
Yeah.
And that having these conversations needs to include things like the budgeting and your credit score and all of those different aspects of it. Now, for someone who is no longer in that young girl stage and young girl time frame, what would you say is the first thing that they need to work on? Now that they may be a single mother, they may be just a woman who's single, they may be a married woman. What would you say to them when they are ready to start that journey to be able to invest in real estate?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to get your financial house in order, so to speak, right? So you need to know what your credit score is. You need to pull your credit reports and take a look at them. If you need credit repair, definitely get in touch. There's some reputable companies out there, and actually there's one that I will be teaming up with shortly, but that will help you to get your credit score, get certain items off your credit and improve your credit score. Because one of the things, credit is everything now, right? You have to, if you want a car, if you want insurance, if you want a job, everybody's checking your credit. So no matter what, that should be one of the very first things that you take care of. And also your interest rates are going to be better. So, if you have a lower credit score, you might be able to get a home, but you're going to be paying more for it over the term, over the 20, 30 years that you have that mortgage. So a lot of people don't realize that difference either. That could be the difference of maybe $100, $200 a month, and that adds up to, $1,200, $2,400 a year over 30 years. That's a lot of money that could be going towards savings. So the reason, I don't think people kind of make that connection as to why your credit, I have a 660, I can get a loan. Well, if you can push it up to 700, you can probably save yourself a couple $100. You know what I mean? So it's things like that, just thinking about kind of long term, but in the short term, definitely get an overall picture of where you stand with your credit. And then you start looking into the second thing is make yourself a budget. If you don't budget, look at things that you can cut out. So I have in my book, I have look at a weekly budget. So for about 2 or 3 weeks, look at where you're spending your money, right? If you're buying lattes every day from a certain company that costs $6 or $7 a day, you can cut that out. That's $30, $40, $50 a week. That's money that can go off paying debt or put into savings, things like that, eating out. Instead of, one of the tips I recently started doing with my boyfriend is we go to happy hours. We'd love to eat out, but it was getting so expensive, right? Because we like good restaurants. So I was like, you know what? I went and found a whole list of all the happy hours near us, and we go, and it cuts our bill in half almost sometimes. So we still get to eat out, every now and then, but we're not spending a couple $100 doing it. So just looking at where your spending is going, seeing where you can cut back, even temporarily. I don't like the word budget as much. I know some people don't, but where can you just save and just move some things around so you can put yourself in a position financially to purchase?
Yeah, that's like that dirty B word. Like you say budget and everybody like cringes in the room.
I know. It's like I had a good term for it, but I forgot. I got to write that down instead of budget. Yeah.
Now, I know that you're on the path, like you already have the book published, but now you're on this path of speaking and going to events. And because this is still a topic that's still kind of new and fresh to a lot of people because it hasn't been a topic they've talked about before, what do you find is that nervousness for you in, presenting this information to people? How do you think people are going to respond to it?
I'm not nervous. If you would have told me about 5 years ago that I would enjoy speaking in front of people, I'd been like, you're crazy. I had a fear of public speaking, like no other. So 5, 10 years ago, 20, there's no way. I'd be like, yeah, okay. But I'm passionate about this whole mission, about the education, about letting people know and just helping people, right? So for me, a lot of the speaking that I'm geared toward right now is trainings and, getting a room of women together and just going through. I have a workbook that I have devised where we just go through and do some exercises, and they have some takeaways and their own homework to do afterwards. So for me right now, that part I love. I absolutely love it. So talk to me about getting on some bigger stages. I might not feel, I might be a little bit, I might have to come to you and be like, girl, what do I do? But for right now, the speaking that I'm geared toward again, and panels, and I like panel discussions. So, just talking about the topic or, financial literacy, home ownership. So things like that are, that's what I'm gearing toward right now. Baby steps for me, baby steps.
And that is definitely okay.
Mm-hmm.
I found that, when you start in that, in that arena and you're doing trainings and you become a lot more comfortable,
mm-hmm.
Because you never know what the demographic is going to be of the events when you do larger events. So you don't know if everybody in the crowd is going to like you, love you, not like you. You don't know. Because it's a mixture of people. So I definitely agree with you there. And listen, when you love it and you're passionate about it, it shows up every time you speak.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So just even listening to you, you know, you can tell your passion. So it's there. It's genuine and it's there and people know it. So it's not like you're trying to sell them anything. You just give, and that's what I want to do. I'm not trying to sell, because most places I go now, I can't sell real estate in the state. I'm licensed in Florida, but if I go speak in Michigan, I'm not selling you anything. I just want to educate you. I just want you to know about, you know, the process. I want you to know certain tips. I want you to know things that you can do to save you money. I want to give you some insider secrets, if you will, and just help you and point you in the right direction and connect you with trusted people who've been vetted. So that's my whole goal.
And, you know, that speaks volumes as someone who is, you know, a coach and a speaker, and it's always about service first. I want to serve.
Right.
I want to serve. I want to make sure that you have the basic necessities that you need in order for you to make the best decision, start something, change something. That's what I want to do, is give you what you need. Right. Now, does everybody always take that advice? Well, you know, some people are different. It takes them a little longer, but that's okay.
Right.
You know? But you find that the more you do it, the more people you reach. Then you have those that come back and say, okay, I want to do this with you. Okay, well, I know you don't do this, but can you recommend someone? You know, you start to build on that networking pool that you have and things of that nature. So I love how we're able to expand our businesses just by serving.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just by serving.
Absolutely.
Now, I always ask everyone that comes onto the show, what has been a blunder for you in this journey so far? You know, we've talked about everything and anything from wardrobe malfunctions to having too small of print when it comes to your book and all types of stuff. So in the journey that you've had so far, what has been a blunder for you?
Oh, my goodness. I think one of the blunders, too small print, one of the blunders that happened actually was I belong to the Links here in South Florida, my chapter, and my chapter president actually ordered a copy of the books for my chapter for our one of our events, and the printed copies, like maybe 5 or 6 of them, totally came out the wrong color. I mean, they were from Amazon. They were, I'll hold up a copy. This is the book, right? It's nice orange. It has the nice color, but it was blurry. I was just like, what the? And she was like, Tam, I ordered some of these books and so I was like mortified. So we sent them back and got them reissued, but that was not a nice presentation.
Oh my goodness. And you know what's interesting is that when you see it on the screen, it looks like perfectly fine. Like you really don't know what it's going to look like
exactly
in your hand.
Exactly. So yes.
Fun times. Gotta love it. You just gotta love it. Or things are misaligned and all types of other stuff. But I can definitely agree with you on that one. It's kind of like, well, and especially now, because now, of course, it's no longer Create Space. Everything is through KDP. So it takes longer for you to get your books.
Absolutely.
Like 2-3 weeks now for you to get your books.
Yeah.
So it's all types of added extra shenanigans when it comes to, you know, having those copies ready. But whoo.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, we live in a time now where we would not have been able to do this, you know, a decade ago, you know, self-publish or have this access. So you got to roll with the punches. I wasn't happy about it, but I was like, you know what? I'll just have to reorder, send them back, reorder. We're good. You know, so you just have to kind of bob and weave as entrepreneurs, right?
And you know what's interesting? I look back and I go, so the authors that had to order their books ahead of time, I'd have had gray hair.
Yeah.
Sitting there with 500, 1,000 books, 5,000 books.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Oh my goodness, I couldn't. At this point, I'm like, I can order 20 books if I want to order 20 books. I can order, 100 books if I want to order 100 books.
Yeah.
But y'all, 500 books?
Right. 5,000 books? Yeah. Can't even imagine.
can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
And now, what have you found has been the number one question that you always get whenever you do a training or an event when it comes to real estate? What's that number one question that people always run to you with?
A lot. There's actually two. It's like, do I have to have, perfect credit to buy a home? Right? That's, people think that they have to have 800 credit scores, 850 credit scores, like perfect credit. And so it's the credit question. And what is the second one? It just slipped my mind. But that's not definitely the main question. Like, what do I have to have for credit? Or some people don't realize that you need credit, income, and have a decent debt to income ratio. So some people say, well, I have money, but I don't have any credit. Why can't I buy a house? Because now things have changed since the market meltdown. People aren't just giving loans anymore. They are checking your income. You have to have the credit, and you have to have you can't have too much debt. So that's the thing. Well, I bought a house and I had the credit, and so now you have to have all three. So that's a question that comes up all the time. Like, well, why was I able to buy a house back then? Or my sister's, boyfriend's little sister got a house back then. And, and it's like, that was back then. And we went through a recession and things have corrected itself. So now you have to have everything, all your ducks in a row at this point. So
that is so funny, because you have so many people that are just like, oh, well, I think that's the conversation is, I'll just go buy it cash, or, I don't need to have this. I don't, they're always missing some piece of it. Mm-hmm. But from their angle, they're like, oh, well, I don't need that anymore.
Right. Right. And if you have cash, if you have $200,000-$300,000 cash and you could go buy a house, you don't need anything else. But most people will say, well, and especially here in Florida, because the prices have gone up more, and you can't buy a house for $100,000 anymore like you could 8 years ago. So people will say, oh, I have $100,000 cash, and they're looking at a $200,000 house or $250,000, and they'll say, but I have half. And I'm like, you still need the credit. Like, it's like if you're going to get a loan, the bank still wants to see your credit worthy. They don't care how much. You could be borrowing, you could have 190,000 and you need 10. They still want to know you have a good credit score. So the people, that's the one thing that I hear from, people. Not a lot of people have like, oh, I have $100,000 cash, but, that you need everything. You need everything right now. So, and you don't have to have an 850 credit score.
And, it's interesting because it directly relates with, being that speaker, because people still look at different things that they did in the past as a speaker, thinking that those are going to be the same things that they need now, and that those are the things that they need to be successful, and not necessarily the case.
Really?
It's completely changed, and we always have to be willing to adjust with the changes.
Got it.
It doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always sound good, but we have to be willing to adjust with the changes. And I think that adjustment is necessary.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I just read, because one of the things that I'm so driven by this home ownership, some statistics as to why it's so important for us to really, really focus, for those of you out there listening who don't own a home yet, or you do own a home and you're looking at investment property, but this is mainly for homeowners, first-time homeowners. Okay, so home ownership rates for Black households ended in 2016 at a 50% low, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, meaning Black home ownership hasn't been this low since the time prior to 1968, when housing discrimination was legal, before fair housing legislation. So Black home ownership rates increased for 30 years and reached nearly 50% in 2004. But because of the mortgage meltdown and the housing crisis, all those gains were lost in the last 12 years. We lost nearly $1 trillion of net worth in Black America. So we need to regain. We're so far behind the curve that we really need to start thinking about what can we do. let's start shifting our money toward owning and stop buying depreciating assets, like a lot of cars and sneakers, and sneakers aren't assets, but you know what I mean? So we really need to start thinking about what can we do. And if you're out there listening and you have a job and you have decent credit, or if you don't and you want some help and you just want some answers, like what can you do to get on that path to home ownership? You know, I really want people, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to connect them with experts in their area. And I'm putting together a network of individuals that are going to help specifically people who want to purchase homes, but who have, little issues. It might take them 6 months or 12 months. That's okay. But, I really want people who have that desire, but just don't know where to start or feel like they can't do it, to really know that it's possible.
So that was interesting, because when we think about what has happened in the last maybe 10, 20 years, when it comes to what's been going on with homes and gentrification, we think about Airbnb. So we think about all of these people that are going and buying homes to rent them out.
And some of them aren't even buying them. Some of them are renting them to rent them out. So yes, so that's a whole nother story. Yeah, we have some very savvy individuals who are renting them and then subleasing them and renting them out. I'm not saying that it's legal, and in some cases it's not illegal if they have it in their lease and they know what's going on. So but
right.
Yeah,
it's something that's set up front that can be done. And
absolutely. So so a lot of people, there's a lot going on out there with these short-term rentals and leasing. But to your point, yes, buying homes, renting them out on Airbnb, there's a lot of opportunity. And another thing I would like to mention is I lived in New York City for several years before I moved to Florida, and I worked on Wall Street. And I did buy a place in Jersey City before the boom. I was fortunate. But I also bought rental property because I wanted to own rental property. But New York and New Jersey was a little bit out of my price range for what I was looking to do. So I grew up in Connecticut. So I went 2 hours to Connecticut and bought property at a third of the price, and my brother managed it for me. But what I say that to say that if you're living in a city like New York, or you're out in California where things are just so high, right? Just get yourself in the market by maybe you're from Philly, and you can go back to Philly and buy a house and rent it out. And then you're still renting in San Francisco or New York City, but you're in the market, right? You're gaining equity. You're getting rental income. So if you feel like, hey, but I live here and it costs $1 million to buy a house, look at other options. Go where you're familiar. I'm not necessarily advocating to go to a city that you're not familiar with, even though some of my friends and I did that and didn't turn out too well. We went to a city that we heard about and we bought some property, and it was just not a good experience because we didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't know the property managers. We didn't know. So a lot of people duped us, but it was a learning experience. And I'm not saying that would happen to you, but I say when I did it in Connecticut, my family was there. My brother was my property manager. I put him on the payroll. He got paid every month, and I knew I could trust him. So think about things like that when you're, whoever's listening, thinking about, okay, I can't buy here or it's too expensive. Start thinking about, it's not necessarily about where you live personally. It's about getting in the market so you don't miss out on opportunities.
Wow. You know what? I have to say that because I just came back from speaking at an event in California, and yes, expensive is not even the word.
It's just
your gas prices or almost $5 a gallon. So, and you just think about you're gonna pay for where you're at. True. Now you got to start thinking, okay, is it worth it? To have a rental property there. Now, because of the housing there, and I would guess that there's a lot of people that would go there for vacation, things like that. So depending on where you are, that may be a good idea. But you definitely have to pay close attention to where you're getting that housing, where you're placing yourself.
Right. And if you can afford it, you have the salary, you have the income and you can afford it, absolutely. But if it's a stretch for you and you have other options, like if you go back home to Idaho or Cincinnati or wherever, and you're looking at housing prices and you could buy, a condo for $100,000, why not consider that? And so, and again, it's something when I sold my property in Connecticut, I was able to I left my job and I sold that property around the same time. And I made enough money where I was able to support myself for a year while I built a business. So that money was used as, I used that equity to help support a business venture. So so there are things that people can do and think of other ways to, make money if they can't afford to buy and they live in an area where housing is just exorbitantly expensive.
And you just made a statement that was really smart. Like, guys, listen, this is your opportunity to get the money, the funds that you said you needed to start your business, to get the funds and the money that you needed to invest in something else. And because it's literally, if you're renting it out, that's money coming in every month. Mm-hmm. And I think we miss, that was part of that conversation that we miss, mm-hmm. Because it's not something that's talked about early on. And everybody that thinks rental property immediately goes to, oh my goodness, they're going to tear up my property. They're going to be calling me all the time. Like, those are the things that trickle into our minds. But in all actuality, that's not necessarily how it goes when you're dealing with rental properties all the time.
Right. And and it could happen. I didn't have some of the best tenants. I had all Section 8 tenants, which I am such an advocate for, because I feel like, there's guidelines. You have to make sure your house is habitable, and they have a responsibility, if they want to stay on the program, to make sure they keep up the house. So, I have clients like, oh no, I don't want Section 8 tenants, or I don't want this. And I am such an advocate of Section 8 tenants, and, and there's ways that you can screen. And so again, it's that fear that comes in. You start thinking of all the things, and don't get me wrong, we all do it, right? I'll admit, I'm about to do my first fixer up and flip. I just went under contract today. So, but I was afraid because I've never done it before. So all these things, I don't know how to fix up a house. I had to find contractors. I'm like, what if the contractors don't show up? What if they take too long? I'm losing money. Da, 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 da. And then it's like, I'm doing it with one of my best friends as a business partner. He's like, let's just do it. We have to start somewhere. So I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. You're absolutely right. Okay. So, fear comes in all different ways, right? The things in your head that you tell yourself, the things that you try to talk yourself out of, the things that you do that manifests itself, so we just have to keep pushing along in order to get what we want to do, to get where we want to be.
And that's where it starts. It starts as, what's your goal for all of this? Where is it that you're really trying to go? Right. You have to have that understanding first, so you're not all over the place, because we don't want you flipping one day and then the next day you're looking for real estate property, and then the following day you're trying to buy the house. Wait. Right. There's a system here. There's a strategy. We want you to make sure that you have the strategy. You're executing on the strategy, but you're not overwhelming yourself as well.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely. It starts with just looking at your overall financial health, getting that in order, figuring out what you can do, talking to professionals, have a conversation with a mortgage lender. Say, what can I, based on where I am right now, how long will it take me? And a lot of mortgage lenders now are in that space where they will help you. Like, okay, you can't buy now, but I just had a client, if you do this, and this in 90 days, you should be ready if you follow this exactly. So, there are people out there that really want to help you, and just don't be afraid to have those conversations. Like, what do I need to do?
And they can map it out just as easy as that, as, what do you need in the next 60 days, next 90 days? They can map it out for you.
Depending on the lender. Yeah, my mortgage partners are phenomenal. And I only work with people that do that, because not everybody is ready today, right? You don't have to call me and be ready today. You can call me and say, okay, I want to buy a home this year. but this is my situation. What do I need to do? I'm a problem solver. I love challenges. I love problem solving. I love pointing people in the right direction, but absolutely. So if you have, if people reach out to me, I have partners all over, and a lot of my mortgage lenders are licensed in several states. So they have contacts. Either they can deal directly with you, or they have an office in your state. So yes, they can tell you, they look at your credit, they look at you have to send them your information, right? They won't necessarily go on your verbal, because some people like to pad the truth a little bit. But you send them your information, and they will absolutely look at it and say, okay, well, but you have to do what they tell you to do. If you do this, 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 and this, like I have one client, he doesn't have any credit. He doesn't have bad credit. He just doesn't have any credit. He's done cash his whole life. So one of the things they had him do was to get a secured card to start building credit. And that's going to take 60 days, to start to hit his report and start building things. And then they gave him 1 or 2 other things to do. But they feel very confident within the next 90 to 120 days that when he comes back, they can approve him for a mortgage.
And so they were asking questions from our live studio audience, and it's about, but they were talking about in California, and they said they'd love to buy a condo in Orange County. Now, buying a condo, is it going to be more or less of a hassle than buying a house?
No. The only thing, when you're buying a condo, you just have to be careful to look at the condo association documents. Okay, so it shouldn't be any more or less of a hassle unless, okay, let me rephrase that. There's a couple things. From a mortgage perspective, there's a condo list, an approved condo list. So when you're talking to your mortgage lender, they will let you know if that condo association, so let's say the condo is called Sunshine Bay Condominiums. They will let you know if Sunshine Bay Condominiums is on the approved condo list, and then you can proceed with getting a mortgage. Why it would not be is if there's a lot of litigation, if there were a lot of foreclosures that are still pending. So those types of things, that's why it wouldn't be. So that's the first step. So you would have to check with your lender, make sure that it is an approved condo. Then you look at your condo documents when you're moving in. You want to check things like, if you have, like I just had one, they don't allow motorcycles. My client has a motorcycle. He couldn't move in. Some of them don't allow pets or a certain type of pet. So if you have a Rottweiler or a pit bull, you might not be able to buy a condo in there. Some of them don't allow certain types of trucks if you have a work truck that has lettering on it. So and some of them have, especially here in Florida, some of them have credit score requirements, minimum credit score. So you can't move in unless you have this credit score. Criminal background checks. So there's a lot of requirements that you should, if you're looking at a particular condo, you can ask your realtor, hey, can you find out if you know something might stick out, can you find out if this is going to be an issue? So that's what you would kind of look for. I hope that was helpful.
Oh, that was. I'm thinking that it was. She also said that she was looking at Florida as well. So I told her that I would make sure she gets your information. So
absolutely. And then I'll give my website, and they have all that. They can contact me directly.
And she said, interesting. I did not realize the information about the pets. That sometimes with condos that there were restrictions when it comes to pets.
Absolutely, yes. A lot of people don't realize that. So
now the other thing is, guys, we have to understand too, now there are so many different options. There are so many different options out there. That's why having the right conversations matter. It matters so greatly who you're talking to, that we're not just going and getting, Susie from down the block and, telling us about what they think are the best options or the best opportunities, but actually going to the professionals and saying, okay, look, this is what I'm working with. This is where I'm trying to go. Is it possible? Is it not possible? What is going to be needed and what's necessary? Because I'm sure that you've had quite a few people come to you with some myths about real estate that you just kind of had to give them the side eye and go, okay, I'm not sure where you got that from.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, the credit score is one big one that comes up all the time. And I'm trying to remember there was another one that always comes up, but yeah, so there are, and people, again, there's information, there's so much information. And one of the things that happens all the time is, well, my neighbor's brother, sister-in-law just bought a house and they told me this and it's just like, oh my goodness. And you don't know how many times I've asked someone, will you give me their number or let me verify, or, and it just doesn't happen. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Guys, we can't go off of misinformation. Again, this is literally talking about resetting, the foundation of Let's Play House. As little girls, we were taught to, make the house into a home and cook and clean and all of these wonderful things. But guess what? Now is the time for us to really think about it and say, okay, but we were never really taught about real estate investment. We were never really taught about even just buying our own home ourselves before we got married and, all of these different things. And so now we're kind of at a state where, what are we really doing for our children? And are we setting them up so that way they're not in this same predicament when they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, right, turning around and saying, I don't own anything. I don't have any assets, right, true assets, that I can work with in a time of a crisis. Because that's what, when you get real estate, that's part of what it is something that you can fall back on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just thought of the other myth is that you need a lot of money to put down, like you need 20% or more. And that is so not the case. So that is something that's super important. With an FHA mortgage, there's, different types of loans. FHA, you put down as little as 3.5% minimum. So you think about that on a $100,000 mortgage, that's $3,500, right? If you have to move first, last, and security, and moving truck and boxes might cost you $2,000 or $3,000, right? So that's a down payment minimum. And I know some houses are obviously more than $100,000, but if you put it in perspective, if the houses are more, you're paying more rent. So you might be paying $2,000 a month, and you have to do first, last, and security. So, and you could buy a $200,000 house or whatever. So the 20% down is definitely not. That is a big myth. And there are even some conventional mortgages where you can put down 3%. You have to have, your credit needs to be a little bit better, but you can put down 3%. So for down payment. And there's so many programs out there too. One of the things I'm working on, and one of my team members, is we're researching the various first-time homebuyer programs. And I'm gonna be doing webinars in different cities starting next month, just talking about and then presenting them, letting them know what type of home buying programs are in their area for first-time home buyers. And just note that being a first-time home buyer just means that you have not owned a home in 3 years. So if you owned a home back before the crisis and it went into foreclosure, or you had to do a short sale and it's been 5, 6, 7 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer. So you can take advantage of these programs.
Wow. Now that I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. People are running around thinking, there's no help for me. And in all actuality, there.
Yes. Yes.
It's all about the conversations. Guys, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I want you to let them know how they can get in contact with you so they can keep up with that information, and also how they can get the book as well.
Absolutely. So the book, Buy Homes Not Shoes, is available on Amazon. Tamra Celeste is my name again. And my website, tamraceleste.com, you can go on there. If you want to find a realtor or you want to reach out to me, you can enter your information. I am also on Facebook under the Home Buying Coach, Women's Home Buying Coach, I believe. LinkedIn, Tamra Celeste, and I think that's it. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm so thankful that you were able to come on today, because definitely this is a conversation that needed to be had. And as an author, as a speaker, it's like, what are we going next? What's the next thing for us? And a lot of people don't realize how great we can really expand on our business when we decide that we're going to start doing some things with real estate. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate you guys, because guess what? If there were no studio audience and viewers and listeners, then there would be no Speakeasy podcast. And guys, if you are an author or speaker, I would love to have you on as a guest. If you go to bit.ly/Speakeasy podcast, all lowercase, by all means, you can come on as a guest. I would love to have you. And then, of course, with this particular topic for today, I want to know your reviews. I want to know what you felt about it, what it made you feel on the inside. But with that being said, you can definitely leave us a review over on iTunes by going to bit.ly/Speakeasy podcast show, all lowercase. And I am your host, Altavice Pelzer. Guys, we're starting the World Voice Summit February 1st. Looking forward to empowering you. But not only that, we still have the Speakeasy podcast going on throughout the whole summit. So we want to make sure that we're connecting with you at every single opportunity. Hey, look, we appreciate it. And until next time, guys, don't forget to press it out. See ya.